Hello and welcome to Second Look with me, Lisa Joseph. Activity in the political landscape has been ramping up ahead of the constitutionally due 2026 general elections. New candidates are coming on stream with more throwing their hats in the ring. Today we speak with one such prospective candidate. Born and raised in St. Lucia's inner city community of Toulouse, Marcia, as the middle child and only girl of 7 siblings. She grew up an avid sports lover, mainly cricket and table tennis, which she played with her brothers. Her passion for achieving goals is due to her humble beginnings, she says, disciplined upbringing, and being raised with tough brothers who always pushed her to be her best. She completed her secondary school education at the St. Joseph's Convent and later moved on to the University of the West Indies, where she received a bachelor's degree with first-class honors in management studies. She continued her education goals by obtaining her master's degree in finance from the University of Leicester in the UK and became a certified financial planner with the Canadian Securities Institute. With 25 years of work experience in the banking system, she has served in several senior positions where she excelled and gained a wealth of knowledge in the finance and banking sector. She is family-oriented and is proud of her 2 sons. But tragedy struck after her first husband suddenly passed away, making her a widow and a single mother instantly. She has beat the odds and wants to use her valuable knowledge, experience, and determination to create positive change that helps build empowered communities in St. Lucia. She is Marcella Johnson, prospective UWP candidate for Grosley. Marcella, thank you so much for being with us, and it's going to be an absolute pleasure for me to have a wonderful and healthy discourse with you. Welcome.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you for this wonderful introduction, and thank you for allowing me to be here with you today.
Well, I tell you, you are one of the most gracious women that I've met over the years, and I want to say that I've known you for a few years.
Quite some time.
Yes, and you know, Marcella has this really quiet personality, but by no means is she a very quiet individual. She has quiet strength. I think that's what it is. You have a quiet strength, and we will get to that a little later on, because that would have, I think, would have centered you so much, given that what you've gone through. But you are a Marcia girl like me.
Oh yes.
Toulouse,
yes.
Like me.
Yes.
So tell me about your experience growing up in Marcia, Toulouse.
Okay, growing up in Marcia, Toulouse, well, Marcia has not changed all these years later in terms of development. But growing up back then, I played with my brothers, and I grew up in a small 2-bedroom home. The kitchen was outside, but we were happy, we were content. We used products of the environment as our toys. I remember we used to take the milk cans and put pieces of wood, and we would drive it as our cars. We created the cricket bats from pieces of wood. We made our own bats. Back in the day, you had the tires from the vehicles. We would cut up the tube, and we would make catapults to play with and try to, to put stones and that sort of thing. But growing up with my brothers, it was very happy for me. Our parents did their best in trying to take care of us. I remember in the home, my older brothers would have slept in one of the rooms, and I remember sleeping on the floor with my 2 younger brothers. And later on, as time progressed, our home was expanded. My father would have taken a loan to expand the home, and it was not until maybe I was in about Form 2 that I had my own bedroom. So these are some of my memories from back then. My father would have pushed education and instilled in us that we had to go to school and do well, so much so that he would line us up to look at our report books. So we understood those values were critical. But as anything else, my father had his challenges and my mom as well. My mom never worked until I was about age 13. Prior to that, my father was the sole breadwinner. But he had his challenges due to his circumstances. He smoked marijuana and had a gambling addiction. So sometimes when he got his salary, most of his money would have been spent by Mr. Paul up Menard Hill. So when he came home, that would have created this harmony in the home. I remember my mother saying, you spent all your money on this, and what does she have? Yeah. But luckily for him, he also had a skill where he did mechanic. So every day he would get little jobs and would have been able to provide for us. So we were never hungry or thirsty. They tried their best to take care of us.
But how did that impact you, though? You think that looking back now on those years, did it shape you in any way in terms of maybe how you see how a household should run, perhaps how you would, your choice in choosing a mate? What sort of impact do you think that would have had on your life? Maybe even choosing your career path.
Oh, yes. It had a significant impact on my life because I saw what was happening around me in the community with other persons as well. Especially, I mean, looking at it from the point of view, he would say something like, do as I say and not as I do. So he knew that some of the things he was doing was not what he would want his kids to be doing. And we listened. And by him imparting those values on us, I think it shaped me as a young woman in choosing the kind of partner that I would want to be with. So that shaped the choice of relationships that I entered, in terms of having that critical ability to analyze certain key traits in an individual and whether that would align with my values. So that was key. And it's important when you're raising a family that you have the right individual that would be there at your side to support you, to mentor the kids so that they in turn can do well. Because there are a lot of challenges out there that we go through every day that impact our lives, and you need to have strong family values to be able to overcome some of these.
We'll get to some of that, to get some of you, and I have some few interesting questions for you along those lines a little later on. But I want to know about your decision to choose a career in finance. Why did you choose that?
Okay. It never was my first choice to choose a career in finance. At school, I studied the sciences. From convent, I did all the sciences.
Look like a science girl to me, yeah.
Yes. So when I chose my subjects at A level, it dawned on me that out there, what you see a lot of businesses. So it would be good to have a skill in business as well. So when I chose my subjects, I studied maths, chemistry, and economics at A level. So in choosing those subjects, I gained a liking for economics. And my first job when I left A level was working at the bank. It was then called Caribbean Banking, which later was rebranded to RBTT Bank. And this is where I started my career. And I started as a teller, and I worked my way up to various senior positions. And the way I did this was through hard work. I recall when my son was just 2 years old, having to enroll in continuing education at UWI, and after work I would have to leave to attend school at the morn and get back home very late. Luckily for me, I had the support of my late husband then, but this served me well. But it was through hard work, toiling through the midnight hours, and then having to get up and go to work the next day. So it was a great sacrifice of personal time.
So do you think that your upbringing as I said in the intro there, that sort of humble beginnings that you had really gave you that drive for you now to want to create a different home environment for your own family.
Oh yes, it really gave me that drive, and it also instilled in me that value of really looking out for your neighbor, looking out for others. Because in the community, I had mentors as well, and it's very important to have mentors around you, people to guide and direct your life.
Now, you have 2 sons. Tell me about that, raising men, because I often say to women that when you have a son, you don't have a boy, you're not raising a boy or boys.
You are
raising men.
Yes.
So what was that experience like? And coming from a household where you had 6 brothers.
Yes.
So was that a natural thing for you to just be able to interact with them?
It was a natural thing to interact with men. The one thing I learned about interacting with men, and which has rubbed off on me, is that men are bold. They say anything to you, and you have to be tough. So I got that kind of toughness very early on, that anything they say, you don't take it to heart. You don't hold grudges. It's about just being there and being part of the gang, basically.
Yeah, so it's almost because as women we tend to be more emotional.
Yes.
We lead more of our emotions. And you're right, because I work in an environment where, pretty much male dominated. And some of them can be brutal.
They can be brutal.
Can be brutal.
Right.
And if you don't check yourself, you are in your feelings all day long.
All day long.
And that's just some real talk as women.
Yes.
You
but I've learned to put all that behind me, coming from a background of having to be around boys. Working going to school, I would have interacted with girls, so I know the difference in terms of how women are and how men are, because I would have been exposed to both sexes early on in life and how they behave.
So I'm curious about what you thought of as you were raising your sons. What type of men did you want them to be? Did you envisage them, their lives when they aged 18 and 25? And
oh yes, I did. And along the way, I would speak to them, teach them certain values, ensure that we attended church, because it's very important, that spiritual life, to ensure that you enshrine those values in your children, because spirituality is very important. So I tried my best to instill that in them. And as men, I taught them to respect each other, respect persons, especially women. And I know out there, and we see it in the communities every day, people don't usually speak about it, but you have situations of domestic violence, where partners in the home are not very nice to each other. And this is not something that is really acceptable in society, but yet certain persons may not be aware of it, because there's not much awareness out there on domestic violence. So
let's face it, most of our homes, it has almost become this acceptable thing. I mean, you alluded to the issues with your own dad, and when he would come home and if he spend the paycheck doing things that your mom would not approve of.
Yes.
There was discord in the house. And,
yes.
and sometimes we do not consider that to be domestic violence, because we only think of domestic violence as being that physical injury.
Right.
So you're punching, you're fighting, you're stabbing. Right.
Exactly.
But we do have the verbal abuse.
The verbal abuse
that goes on.
Yes.
Perhaps a little shoving here and there.
Yes.
And
it also goes further, because I recall the new act that was the Domestic Act passed in 2022. It also incorporates cyber stalking as well. Yeah. So it has gone beyond, and this is groundbreaking for St. Lucia. I'm not sure that this has been implemented here as yet, but it is a groundbreaking act.
Yeah, to provide those protections for both men and women.
And women,
it's not just and the women who do that.
And what is more critical about this act is no longer does the victim have to report the crime. The police can intervene and prosecute the matter without the victim.
And we'll get to some of that a little later on. But I want to ask you about the loss of your first husband. Take us back to that time. What was it like? Because, you know, as I said earlier, instantly you became a single mother.
Yes.
Of two young boys. What was that like for you?
Being a single mother can be very difficult. I recall in 2009 when Brian passed away, it was sudden death. I did not expect it. And at the time, I was away in Grenada on a training course. And when I got the news, it was like, what happened? It's like my whole world came crashing down. And at the time, it wasn't easy to get back to St. Lucia in one day from Grenada. So I had to overnight and go through St. Vincent. And all this time, I'm in limbo because, of course, you're in denial because you haven't seen the body. You don't know if it really happened. Other persons have said that to you. And then to come home, then my kids, I had to think of what had to be done with the kids. Especially my oldest son, who was 11 at the time. He was very attached to his father. So it was really, really a hard time during that difficult moment. And after a few months, I realized the plight of just being on my own, because he used to be there to pick up the kids from school. So I had to be able to arrange for that on my own. Getting back home, helping them with their homework, providing for their financial needs all on my own. And at the same time, I was also building my residential home. And at that time also, I was studying for my master's as well. So it was a really difficult time.
You had a lot on your plate.
A lot.
But how did you self-care at that point? Because, you know, as women, we take on so much. There's so of our family stress. We are the provider, whether it be, you know, financially. We are the provider of the emotional stability. We are the teacher in the home. In your case, you are the both mother and father, and of course, the boys need that father figure. So, how did you even? And again, you had the loss of a partner, that loved one, your lover was gone. And that's a different set of pain to process. How did you manage all of that?
It is something that I didn't do entirely on my own, because when I look back, I would say, and I'm grateful for the support I had around me from my parents. I remember my father saying, I will be a father to those two boys. And he picked those kids up from school every day religiously. So that provided me with support. You had other persons in the community that I would go to for emotional support. I remember my manager at the time, Mary Popo. I leaned on her for emotional support. I would pick up the phone probably 12, 1 o'clock in the morning, sometimes crying, because it's not easy. Time is the only healer. And she would be there praying with me so much so, probably for hours, until I got a relief from that grief I was experiencing at the time. And then I had to be strong for my two boys as well, because I didn't want them to see me breaking down all the time. And of course, the older one, he was writing common entrance at the time. And I remember that his teacher at the time, Miss Isaac, she provided a lot of support to Hans. So I say all of this to show that we have a community out there who really care. And if persons stop to think in society and just say, hey, wait, let's see how we can help each other out, then we will have a better community.
Yes, better communities. But going through all of that with that community support, you were able to find love again.
Yes, yes.
What was it? What was that like? Did you ever think, consider at any point that you are betraying your first husband in any way? How did you process having to move on with your life and provide the sort of stability that your boys needed, and still honoring your late husband at the same time?
Okay. Finding love again did not happen instantly, because when my husband died, I was not looking for any relationship. I was able to take care of the two boys financially, along with I had someone who helped me in the home, who cared for them as well. So this served me well because I had a very demanding job. So I wasn't really looking at the time. But in looking for a partner, and at that time you're a single mother with two young kids, so much is going through your mind because you want to ensure that whoever you bring into your home respects your children. Because at the end of the day, your children come first.
And they share the same values.
Yes.
Because you are bringing up your children in a particular way. So you want that new individual to share those principles and values.
And whilst your kids may not be your ruler or the boss of the home, their views are equally important. Their emotion, their mental health, their physical health is equally important. So we have to be mindful of how our decisions can impact our kids. So in choosing a partner, I was very careful. You would want to ensure that whoever you bring to your home would be able to add some sort of value to you and your children. So in other words, they need to bring something to the table and have to be respectable. Because at the end of the day, your kids are also watching you and depend on you for their stability. So the choices you make impact them.
Yeah, and as women, we good choices. I remember hearing a regional prime minister, I can't be too certain whether it was out of Antigua or Jamaica, I'm not too certain. But that prime minister one time, and because they were apparently, dealing with the domestic violence and violence in the communities. And then the prime minister said that women must begin to make better choices in their partners. And that just created a firestorm in the country and across the region. People were discussing that. Because I don't think that as women sometimes we hold ourselves accountable for our part in making a choice about an individual that we bring into our lives, and then that individual doesn't turn out to be the knight in shining armor that we were hoping for. So I think sometimes as women there's a lack of accountability where that is concerned. So when you said that, it just brought that back to me, that we don't discuss enough as women making good choices in our partners, in selecting partners, and that's very important.
It's very important. And I also want to just look past us making choices, but as women, we raise children. And traditionally, boys were raised to be tough. And it's also equally important that when we are raising our young men, we need to let them know that it's okay to express emotion. Usually boys were taught that, oh, you shouldn't cry and so on. It's okay to express emotion. So that shows that if you are able to do that, you can transcend those emotions into a relationship where you can nurture someone else, nurture children.
And allow our men now to have a space within themselves so that they can now feel as if they can express. And of course, allowing them to be able to better relate. You were talking about allowing them to respect other men and themselves. So allowing them to connect emotionally with their own selves now gives them that capacity for them to be able to respect women, respect men, respect
others, yes.
Among them. And you talk about nurturing. You've nurtured yourself very well, because you were in banking for over, what,
25 years.
And then you just decided, enough of this. I need a second act. And then you're opening a new chapters. And you're becoming you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Fascinating.
Yes. Well, it was
Were you
natural.
scared, though? Because I find that when I speak with individuals and they turn in new leaves, they talk about that uncertainty, not being sure if what they're going to do is going to work out, because you're leaving something that's so familiar to you that you've done over decades, and then to just branch off into something new. It means and being a woman, because you have your son's stability, you want to constantly being able to know that you can be that rock there.
Yes, my mortgage.
Yes. So how did you get up all of that boldness and just say, enough of that, let's move on?
Okay. It was a natural progression for me, because throughout my career in banking, I was a business banker. So I would have gone through a lot of proposals for business loans and so on. So I'm very familiar with many financial aspects of businesses. But in making that transition from the bank to starting my own business, I was very careful about that decision. I gave it much thought to decide what I wanted to do. And before I actually took the leap to leave the bank, I started this business, this car rental. So in a sense, it's like I was managing two jobs at the time. So I hired one person whilst I was working for the bank, this young guy, and I would have received the calls for the car rental. And within a year, I realized this business was growing at such a rapid rate. It had surpassed my income, and it had placed me in a comfortable position where I knew that I could have taken the leap to leave the bank. So basically, the moral of this is, you can't leave what you have and go into this cold turkey. You need to ensure that you have an income while you build on another income.
Spoken like a true finance individual. And so you realized that there was all of that capacity for you now to be able to think. But your son, one of your sons has now joined you in the business. How does that dynamic work out?
Okay. So Hans would have completed his bachelor's in commerce from St. Mary's University in Canada in 2020. He came back during COVID, the pandemic. So he actually completed the degree in St. Lucia, because at that time, all universities, and it's like the world was on a shutdown. So naturally, as the business was expanding, he fitted himself right into the business. He has a lot of ideas which we would implement along the way. He knows the business inside out. And what has happened now that I'm involved in politics, he's solely managing this business, which gives me more time to be able to do my other activities.
And so he's just happy to be able to come and put more of his stamp on this. But I see the smile, and I hear the pride in your voice, that you are indeed delighted that your son has now taken over something that you've built from scratch. This is fascinating.
Yes, and he works very hard in the business, and I know that leaving it in his capable hands, it's in good stead. And he has a lot of bright ideas, so I know he's going to expand on what I have started.
And so we can segue now, because you introduced it, politics. Persons would be able to akin your name to being the treasurer for the United Workers' Party. Is that correct?
Yes, this is a role that I started last year, March.
But now you want to go full throttle. You want to be smack down in the middle of all of this action, why do you want to leave the figures and become a main figure yourself?
Lisa, if I may ask, why not?
You tell me.
The thing about St. Lucia, for anyone to make any meaningful impact or change in this country as a citizen, you cannot do it on your own. And sadly, it is only through politics that you can make any meaningful change in this country. I go by through the various communities. I see so many things that need to be fixed for the people of this country. Look at the state of our roads, the Rodney Bay Road. Crozele is a tourism district, and this is the state of our roads. You go in the inner communities. I meet people. Just last evening I met a guy. He had to spend $3,000 buying shocks for his vehicle because of the state of the roads. So this is creating higher costs for individuals. This money could be spent on food rather than maintenance of a vehicle. Look at our healthcare system. Healthcare is not a privilege. It's a right for all of us. We all have families. We all have families. And if I give you the story of my mother last year, my mother suffered bilateral stroke last year and had to be admitted to OKEU hospital. She was taken to that hospital on a gurney. At the time, in the ER, there were no beds. This is day one. I came to see her. She's in the corner there, in the corridor, on this gurney. And when you suffer a stroke, it's like your body is lifeless. It's heavy. You can't move the person. The second day, she's in the same location. It's as if nobody had attended to her. I asked my father, did anybody come to see her? Have you seen anybody? I think he mentioned that he may have seen the nurses, but she looked like she was the same. But nothing had been done. And then I saw her lying down on this gurney. It's like part of her body. Her feet were hanging off the gurney. So my father and I, we tried to pull her, but we couldn't because it's like dead weight. And there's no sheet covering her. And as a woman, you need to have your dignity. You shouldn't be able to see the pampers or anything on a woman in a hospital. So we tried, and then there was this young guy passing, nice guy. We asked for assistance to be able to help pull her up, put her in a proper position and a more comfortable position on the gurney. And this is how we were able to put her in a better position. But what happened also is that for days she was there. No beds at the hospital, no beds. The staff at the hospital are under pressure. Then eventually I said, okay, I'm going to remove my mom from this hospital. Now, many other St. Lucians, they don't have any other alternative, no. But at that point, I think one of my brothers knew a nurse there, and she was trying to arrange for a bed to be able to get my mom a bed. There were no beds on the ward. So there was this little room, and they said they would arrange a bed in there. So when we went into the room, there was another patient in there, a lady. And she said to me, my lady, you don't want to bring your mom in there. And I said to her, why? She said, I have been here for 3 days. 3 days. And ever so often, all throughout the night, they are just bringing the dead in on me. Yes, the dead. And this lady was very traumatized. And when she told me this, I also felt traumatized. And I had already made arrangements to get my mom to another hospital. And it was the best thing I did, because as soon as she got to the other hospital, she got care right away. Within a day, she started improving with the care and attention she was getting. And the other thing which was critical, because I don't recall that she was getting any medication or antibiotics at OKEU. The doctor indicated that antibiotics is very critical for a stroke victim, because usually after the stroke they get an infection in the chest, and if antibiotics are not given, then that is what usually kills the patient. So had I not removed my mom from there, it could have been a different scenario today.
And that was how many years ago?
That's last year,
March.
Yes.
Last year.
And the situation has not changed at all. Recently, I met someone in the community, an elderly lady who went there for a minor stroke. And she said when she got there, no medication. Some of the nurses have to use money from their own resources to go to a pharmacy external to the hospital to purchase medication for the patients. So we have some very, very good, hardworking staff who care for the people. But you know what? The government has failed the people, because healthcare should be a priority. Person shouldn't have to be going to the hospital and to have to die for simple conditions that could be prevented.
Well, you say that the government has to make healthcare a priority. The government has said over and over that it is a priority. They've acknowledged, the government has acknowledged, that there are challenges, major challenges, but they are giving resources. And also, too, we saw the imposition of the 2.5 health and security levy. So that would give some indication that the government certainly wants to be able to improve the healthcare sector. And recently we did hear about the monies from the CIP, I think in the range of some $11 million, if I'm not mistaken, to the OKEU. However, there are still complaints that nothing much has changed. So is it just a question of the population that needs to be patient so that things can smooth itself out? What do you think to that?
I don't think that is a question of whether the population has to be patient. I believe that there is not much emphasis being placed on the healthcare situation in this country. And I will say this because looking at the estimates from this budget to the previous budget, the allocation for healthcare was much less than the previous year. So that's one. The CIP funds. The government is not transparent with what's happening with CIP. Where are the monies? All these passports that are being sold, if these monies are being injected into our health system, then all the debt that the various hospitals are owing could be paid off. These monies could otherwise be used for that purpose. Now you mentioned the health and security levy which was imposed. This was one of the first things that this government did when they came into office. And they misled the people. We were told that this health and security levy was to improve health and security in the country. Yet the monies was not used for that purpose. The monies for health and security is still being put into the consolidated fund. So how can you be sure that it's being used for health and security when you have no mechanism for that? Now this health and security levy, if you'll permit me, but let's be clear, I don't oppose the idea of funding for health and security. What I oppose is the transparency by this government and the method in which the monies of this country is being spent.
So you don't think that there has been enough transparency, a lack of transparency or on the part of the government where that is concerned?
There is a lack of transparency. The health and security levy, a lot of persons in this country are already burdened by the high cost of living. If you look at the supermarket shelves, something basic such as sanitary napkins is almost $28 for the always sanitary napkins. So as a single...
But you do have those that are like 45 and in that range.
Yes.
As well.
So it's very...
It takes me aback every time that I go, and I'm like, okay, wow, yes.
Yes, even bread has increased, $6.50. So we have high cost of living, and to impose that additional tax, a levy, on the backs of people, low-income families, it's burdensome. And this tax, the way it's calculated, it's compounded because it's placed on the cost of the goods and services, and then the VAT is added onto that. So what you have happening in effect is that you are paying more than 15% in taxes for goods and services because of how the levy was implemented.
So as you move around and as I say, grocery, you have your eye on the grocery constituency. As you move around that constituency, do you get a feel that the constituents are burdened by the imposition of the levy, high cost of living? Because after all, grocery, as you indicated earlier, that's the sort of tourism district, and tourism figures are always very high, and you know, the Minister for Tourism constantly speaks about being able to derive all of the benefits from tourism, community tourism coming on stream. So do you find that the constituency is not yielding the benefits of tourism at all?
When I move around the constituency, I see a lot of youth who are unemployed. There are a lot of other mothers, single mothers, who are also unemployed. People are complaining about the high cost of living. Fuel. The cost of fuel is high at $16.50 per gallon. People are complaining about that. And when you look throughout the region, St. Lucia is paying one of the highest for gas right across the Eastern Caribbean, right? But in terms of the levy again, right? Another thing that I need to make very clear, and it's important that persons understand the issue with the levy as well. When we were misled to the point that a few months later we discovered that the levy was only implemented because it was a prescription for a policy loan granted by an external financial institution. So in other words, this levy was implemented to satisfy creditors, outsiders. So if you are implementing a tax burden on your people, and it is supposed to be for local national economic priorities, you need to be able to understand the needs of the people and how this will impact them. And by implementing this, this doesn't show that we care about the people, that the needs of the people were taken into consideration. The circumstances, the societal problems, none of these were addressed. It was just placed there as a tax to acquire a loan, and not in the best interest of the people.
So if you were Minister for Finance, what would you do then in that case?
If I were Minister of Finance, and I will use an example, I would remove this tax burden on this government. And there are clear examples that this tax burden can be removed. Recently, I heard on the news that a foreign company, this levy was removed for this foreign developer. And even recently, it was also removed for the National Trust. So if this levy could be removed for a foreign developer, then it goes without saying that it could be removed on the backs of the people of this country who are already burdensome and suffering because of high rising costs, which we have no control over.
You are interested in a constituency where the incumbent he's dynamic. He talks about having a very good grasp of what's happening on the ground. He's the Minister for Youth and Sports. He certainly does a lot of groundwork. Are you at all daunted if you were to be selected as the UWP candidate to face the incumbent, Kenson Casimir? Are you at all daunted by that prospect?
I am not at all daunted by the prospect of the incumbent. Now you say that he's dynamic, but when I look around Grosley, all the projects that are currently underway were projects which were started by the previous representative, Spider Montoot.
Like what?
You have the Grosley Field. That was a vision of his. You also have a community center at Granivier. That was also his vision. Many of the roads that were being completed. So you have a lot of these, like the back roads and so on. So what I would like to see is action. And if you're aware of any such initiatives that I may be missing, then please enlighten me.
But then why don't you tell me about what you're discovering that's lacking, what's missing, what the needs of the constituency? Tell me about that as you move around and you're interacting with the residents.
As we interact with the residents, healthcare is of critical concern. You have a community with over 27,000 people, and you have basically 2 health centers, one in Moshi, one in Granivier, and then you have the polyclinic. These facilities are not enough to serve the needs of the people. And then you also have persons who visit from Castries and other areas who also add added pressure on the existing staff and the facilities. So healthcare is of critical concern. I have spoken to many of the elderly persons in the community, and this gentleman said to me, you know, this universal health care, he doesn't really see it. It's supposed to be for persons 80 and over. Many persons have not reached that age. And even if you're over 80, he said to me, when he goes to the hospital to get medication, there's never any medication. So he still has to go to the pharmacy to purchase the medication. So there's no real reprieve on health care for the elderly. So this is what they're saying in respect of health care. The roads, if you go in the inner communities, the roads are in a deplorable condition. And some of the residents are crying because they need proper infrastructure. If you go to Labon, for months, the people of Labon were left without water. Water? Can you believe, as a woman, not having to take a proper bath? Tell me about that. Tell me. Water is life. How could persons be left without water and no one is concerned about that? They also complain about the ICT centers which were removed. A lot of them depended on those ICT centers which were closed. And There have been complaints about that because it was very important to some of those persons in those communities. The technology. And there are a lot of other examples I can give.
Do you find that the constituents are finding themselves as direct beneficiaries of tourism, considering that they live in that tourism district?
Okay.
Do you think better can be done? What are your plans, or possible plans on being able to spread that tourist dollar?
Okay, there's much improvement that is needed where tourism is concerned, because as you are aware, Grosley is a vibrant tourist district. It's the mainstay of the economy for St. Lucia as a whole. More can be done where tourism is concerned in the north. I have realized that we don't have enough attractions, especially for the cruise ship passengers and so on in the north of the island. Most of these attractions are probably in the Sufra area. So there is a lot more that can be done to improve the tourism and other linkages from that industry. But notwithstanding, Grosley also depends on fishing and agriculture as well. When you visit the Grosley fisheries, it needs upgrading as well. The fishermen, they need better equipment so that they can do their jobs properly and be a bit more profitable. There's also need for better skills training facilities for the young people so that the youth who are unemployed can learn a skill and probably become entrepreneurs and, to be able to earn a living, to be able to feed their families. So it's not just about tourism, but looking at the overall economy, how we can diversify the economy, because as you are aware, tourism is susceptible to many shocks externally. And if you look at the pandemic, our country was shut down. And many persons, even in my business, was shut for some time with no money, and most of our businesses were tourism related. So it's important that we look at economic diversification as a way for improving the overall economy and the lives and livelihoods of the people.
It's crime affects, you can't say that there is one specific hotspot. Because crime comes to just about every community in St. Lucia. You are living up in the north. You have concerns about crime? The people that you interact with? What are their thoughts? How do they feel about their security and safety?
Crime is a serious issue. Crime impacts each and every one of us. And the persons in the north, they are concerned about crime. Crime affects the small businesses, the large businesses. Crime affects everyone. And I'll give you an example of something which happened recently. I was speaking to this lady who's a foreigner. She decided to take a stroll, and this place is called Mount Pina. This is a place where a lot of the small tour operators, they take their tourists. It's a trail. People go walking there. And she was walking with her husband and two young girls about age 14. And in the middle of the day, this man comes out of the bush, out of nowhere, and tries to rob them. He tied up the husband. And whilst doing that, he said to the woman, he's going to rape the two girls. And she said to him, do whatever you want with me, but not the two girls. And immediately, while she was looking in her bag to see what she could give to him, she saw that she had a penknife and immediately used that to fight him off. I mean, she probably would have gotten hurt in the process, but Her husband was able to help her because he managed to escape. And she said to the two girls, run. Had she not have done that, then you could well imagine what would have happened.
And it's terrifying.
And there's no security in this area, a place that is used for where locals go as well as tourists. So crime has serious impacts on the community and businesses as a whole, because I speak to persons who ordinarily would have gone out to dinner, and you know what they say? They are fearful. They don't want to go out at night because they are scared. Now, if you don't go out to dinner and patronize the local restaurants and so on, that has a domino effect, because this in turn would affect the revenue of these various businesses. So it impacts all of us.
Yes, and there is a domino effect. Do you, as a woman, and we can speak openly as women, when you look at what has happened to our society, maybe in the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years, 5 years even, and you see how the society has really changed, and in some ways it's really not for the better. Do you worry more about your own security and safety? And you mentioned the experience with this visitor and the two girls and her husband. Do you feel that as a woman you probably are more vulnerable than ever before in considering what we've seen, the trend that we've seen with crime?
Why, certainly, as women, we would be more vulnerable to issues of issues like sexual assault. I mean, it happens mainly to women. You also have, women usually are not able to defend themselves or from attackers. So they are basically more vulnerable. But crime affects even men as well. Mm-hmm. It affects everyone.
Well, I can tell you that in those we've had 3 cases where children were victims, and we're talking about the 2-year-old who was shot while sleeping with the grandmother down in V4. We had the situation of the 12 or 13-year-old down in the mouth. We had that 6-year-old child, and also a 15-year-old girl shot. And these, for me, it touches me very, very deeply, because I'm not getting a sense from the society that they are disturbed by that. We would hear comment here, comment there, but I don't think that we've given this a sustained discussion, a sustained national discussion. Much like when we had the situations where we had probably once every 2 years or 3 years we were having young girls raped and killed in their homes. And so now we are seeing our crime levels and the type of crimes that we're having. It's now irrespective, it's no respecter of person status, age. It's just now open season, almost as if. How do you feel? And as I'm not a mother, and it affects me this deeply, I can only imagine for you.
As a mother of 2 boys, it hurts me when I have to listen to the news and hear about what is happening, the crime to our young men and women. It's unheard of. And no one is coming out and speaking against crime. It's like we are not being proactive. There's just a reactive approach. But we need to look at crime for what it is. We need to tackle crime at its root causes.
Now, when you say crime for what it is, to your mind, what is crime? What
crime does not
make up?
It doesn't surface overnight. It surfaces due to circumstances of the individuals who commit the crime. And let me just explain a bit further. We have to look at the programs we implement as a government, as a society. We have to look at the conditions of households, living conditions, how people live, their financial circumstances, unemployment. We need to ensure that we create an employment for our youth so that they are not idle, job opportunities, to be able to keep the youth engaged. So we need to look at this holistically at its core. When we do all these things and we try to uplift society and persons are doing better, then it will have an impact at reducing the crime. So we have to look at prevention rather than trying to stop the crime. So it has to start. It has to start with these kinds of initiatives. And preventing crime is not only about policing. It's about the entire community. And what I would like to say, I would like to preach. We need unity, peace, and justice in this country. By unity, I find in this country, we are very, very polarized on the issues. We look at issues only from a political angle. We need to come together as one people, one mindset, to be able to deal with the issues of crime, healthcare, and not cast blame. Because crime affects each and every one of us and our families. Healthcare affects each and every one of us. We all have to go to OKEU at some point if there is a need, or our families. So we need to look at this from a point of unity. Because if we don't do this, we will not have peace in the country. We want peace from crime. We want to be able to walk our neighborhoods in peace.
Yeah, Christmas season,
Yes.
Normally, I have some memories as a child being able to walk the streets of Castries and being, completely mesmerized by the lights of the city, the show windows, and all those things. Those are very distant memories now.
Distant memories.
And doesn't happen
at
all. So encapsulate for me as our time runs out your decision to enter as a political candidate. Why is Marcella Johnson the person that the United Workers' Party should select, because there's a selection process for the candidates? So why should you, amongst all of the others who may have their hat in the ring, why should you be the one selected for the Grocery constituency?
Lisa, thank you for that question. What I could say is that I'm a very committed individual. I care about people. I know that all of these issues that we have discussed, these are burning issues, and they are important to me. I would like to see St. Lucians do well, our future generations do well. I would like to see our economy grow and prosper. I would like to see our healthcare improve so that St. Lucians can get the best healthcare that they deserve. I would like for crime to be reduced in this country. These are some of the reasons why I have decided to enter the arena, to be able to effect meaningful change to the people of Grosley and by extension St. Lucia. And I can only do this through politics, because as an individual on your own, and rightfully so, you can't make any meaningful impact on your own. And I have what it takes. I have the determination, the resilience to be able to implement change for the people of this country.
Well, I'm looking forward to, what the final thing would be, and looking forward to having some more conversations with you. We didn't get the opportunity to go through a lot of some of the other issues that are there but getting to know you all over again, Marcella Johnson, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for stopping by and for sharing with us what your next chapter in your life is going to be all about. And I want to thank you so much for watching. And I do hope that you found the conversation to be very engaging and enlightening, and that you've gotten to know Marcella Johnson a little better. I'm Lisa Joseph. Thank you for joining us on The Second Look.